I caught my roommate in a private moment. What happened next changed everything. The bathroom door wasn't locked. I didn't knock because I thought Jake had already left for his morning run like he did every Saturday at 6 a.m., but when I pushed the door open, steam billowing out into the hallway, I froze. He was standing there, fresh out of the shower, water still dripping down his shoulders, and in his hand was a photograph. My photograph. The one from our hiking trip last summer where I was laughing at something stupid he'd said, sunlight caught in my hair. His eyes were closed, his expression so raw and vulnerable it made my chest tighten. Then his eyes opened, met mine in the mirror, and the photograph slipped from his fingers, fluttering to the wet tile floor. Neither of us moved. Neither of us breathed. Ryan, his voice cracked, and I'd never heard Jake sound like that before. Not in the 3 years we'd been roommates. Not in the 5 years we'd been best friends. I should have said something. Anything. But all I could do was back out of the doorway, mumbling an apology that didn't reach my own ears, and practically run to my bedroom. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might crack through my ribs, because in that single moment, everything I'd been trying to ignore, every feeling I'd shoved down deep where I thought it would never surface, came rushing back with the force of a tidal wave. 3 years earlier, I met Jake on move-in day at Pacific Ridge University. I was struggling to carry a mini-fridge up 3 flights of stairs because the elevator was broken, sweating through my shirt and seriously reconsidering my life choices, when someone grabbed the other end. "You look like you could use a hand," he said, flashing me a grin that was equal parts cocky and friendly. Dark hair that fell just slightly over his forehead, hazel eyes that seemed to catch every bit of light, and a build that suggested he actually used the campus gym unlike most freshmen. "Thanks," I managed, trying not to sound as out of breath as I felt. "3rd floor. Room 314, no kidding. I'm 316 by the time we reached the top." We were both laughing about something stupid, and by the end of that first week, we were inseparable. Jake was studying architecture while I was deep into computer science, but somehow our schedules aligned perfectly. We grabbed breakfast together, studied in the library until they kicked us out, and spent way too many nights playing video games and talking about everything and nothing. He was straight. At least I assumed he was. He dated girls casually, never anything serious, and he talked about women the way most guys did. And me? I'd never told anyone at university that I was gay. It wasn't shame exactly, more like self-preservation. I'd come out to my family back home, and they'd been supportive in that careful, still processing way. But starting fresh at college felt easier if I kept that part of myself quiet, except Jake made it hard to keep anything quiet. By sophomore year, we'd moved off campus together into a small 2-bedroom apartment near downtown. It was nothing fancy, just old hardwood floors that creaked at night, a kitchen with mismatched appliances, and windows that overlooked the street where food trucks parked every Thursday. But it was ours, and it felt more like home than anywhere I'd ever lived. That was when things started to shift. So gradually, I didn't notice it happening until it was too late. We developed routines. Jake made coffee every morning, always leaving a cup for me on the counter, exactly how I liked it. I cooked dinner most nights because Jake's culinary skills peaked at microwaving leftovers. We'd watch movies on the couch, our shoulders pressed together because the apartment came with the world's smallest sofa. We'd fall asleep there sometimes, waking up at 2 a.m. with Netflix asking if we were still watching, and one of us draped half across the other. Friends did this stuff. Right, I told myself. Close friends, best friends. But friends didn't lie awake at night thinking about the way Jake laughed at their jokes. Friends didn't memorize the exact shade of green that appeared in his eyes when sunlight hit them. Friends didn't feel their stomach drop every time. Jake mentioned going on a date with someone else. I was in love with my best friend, and it was the most terrifying thing I'd ever experienced. The first time I really understood how deep it went was during our spring break trip to the coast. Jake's family had a beach house they never used anymore, and he'd suggested we spend the week there. Just us, away from school stress and the noise of the city. It should have been perfect, and it was in the most painful way possible. We spent our days hiking along cliff trails, swimming in water so cold it made our teeth chatter, and lying on the beach until the sun turned, our skin warm and our minds quiet. At night, we'd build fires and cook whatever we'd picked up from the local market, drinking cheap beer and talking about our futures. "Where do you see yourself in 10 years?" Jake asked one night, his face illuminated by firelight, making his features look almost ethereal. I thought about it, watching sparks drift up toward the stars. Happy. Doing work I care about. Maybe traveling. Definitely somewhere with better weather than here. Alone? He asked, and there was something in his voice I couldn't quite name. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I guess I hope not. What about you?" Jake was quiet for a long moment, staring into the flames. "I want what my parents have. That partnership, you know? Someone who gets me completely. Someone I can build something real with." He paused, then added softly, "Someone who feels like home." The way he looked at me when he said it made my heart stop. It lasted maybe 3 seconds, that look, but it carved itself into my memory with perfect clarity. Then he blinked, took a swig of his beer, and the moment passed like it never happened. But I couldn't unhear those words. Someone who feels like home. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bed in the beach house, listening to the ocean through the open window and the sound of Jake's breathing from the other room. Around 2 a.m., I gave up and went out onto the deck. The moon was full, turning everything silver and strange. I stood there in my shorts and t-shirt, arms wrapped around myself against the cool breeze, trying to sort through the mess in my head. Can't sleep either? I nearly jumped out of my skin. Jake was standing in the doorway, hair disheveled, wearing only pajama pants. He came to stand beside me at the railing, close enough that our arms brushed. "Just thinking," I said. "About what?" "Everything you us. How much it hurts to want something I can't have. Just life stuff. Future plans. Heavy thoughts for 2 a.m. "Yeah." We stood in comfortable silence, and then Jake did something he'd never done before. He reached over and took my hand, threading his fingers through mine. My breath caught, my pulse skyrocketing, but I didn't pull away. "You're my best friend, Ryan," he said quietly, still looking out at the ocean. "I don't know what I'd do without you, best friend." Right. That's what this was. I squeezed his hand, trying to ignore the way my heart was breaking. "Same here." We stood like that for maybe 5 minutes, hands clasped, neither of us speaking. Then Jake let go, gave my shoulder a quick pat, and headed back inside. Try to get some sleep. I stayed on that deck for another hour, hands still tingling from his touch. Wondering how I was supposed to survive this junior year, things got harder. Or maybe I just got worse at hiding how I felt. Jake. Started dating someone seriously for the first time since I'd known him. Her name was Morgan. She was in his architecture program, and she was genuinely nice, which somehow made it worse. I couldn't even hate her. She made Jake happy, brought out his laugh in that easy way he had. And I should have been happy for him. Instead, I felt like I was slowly suffocating. They'd come back to the apartment together, and I'd make excuses to disappear into my room. I picked up extra shifts at my campus IT job. I spent more time at the library, anything to avoid watching them together, seeing the way Jake looked at her, knowing he'd never look at me like that. Jake noticed. "Of course he did. You've been weird lately," he said one night when Morgan wasn't around. We were doing dishes together, falling back into our old rhythm. "Is everything okay? Did I do something?" "Yes. No. You exist, and I'm in love with you, and it's killing me." "I'm fine," I lied. "Just stressed about classes." Ryan, he turned off the water, drying his hands on a towel before turning to face me fully. "Come on. It's me. Talk to me, God." He made it so hard. Standing there in our tiny kitchen, genuine concern in his eyes. Looking at me like I was the most important person in his world. Even with Morgan in his life, even with everything, I was still his best friend. That should have been enough. "I'm just figuring some stuff out," I said carefully. "About myself." "It's nothing to do with you." That was partly true. It had everything to do with him, but the problem was me and my stupid, inconvenient feelings. Jake studied my face. I could see him trying to piece together what I wasn't saying. "You know, You can tell me anything, right? Literally anything. It won't change how I feel about you, won't it? I wanted to ask, but I couldn't risk it. Our friendship was everything to me, and if I confessed and he pulled away, if things got awkward and we couldn't be roommates anymore, I'd lose not just the man I loved, but my best friend too. I said instead. I promise, I'm okay. Just need to work through some things on my own. He didn't look convinced, but he let it drop. That night, I heard him talking to Morgan on the phone in his room, his voice low and worried. I caught my name a few times. He was concerned about me. Probably confused about why I'd been pulling away. I buried my face in my pillow and wondered how much longer I could keep this up. Jake and Morgan broke up 3 months later. He didn't tell me why. Just came home one Tuesday evening, looking exhausted and sad, and said, "It's over. We ended it." "Jake, I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. Regardless of my own feelings, I hated seeing him hurt. "It's for the best," he said, dropping onto the couch beside me. "We wanted different things. She's transferring to a program in Boston next year, and I couldn't do long distance. Not when." He trailed off, shaking his head. "Not when what?" "Nothing. Doesn't matter now." He was quiet for the rest of the evening, more subdued than I'd seen him in ages. I ordered his favorite pizza, put on a movie I knew he loved, and just sat with him. Somewhere during the second act, his head drooped onto my shoulder, and within minutes, he was asleep. I didn't move, didn't dare. I just sat there, barely breathing, acutely aware of his weight against me. The warmth of him, the trust implicit in the gesture. My arm had fallen asleep by the time the credits rolled, but I still didn't move. When he finally stirred awake around midnight, blinking groggily, he looked up at me with sleepy confusion. "Sorry," he mumbled. "Didn't mean to pass out on you. It's okay." He didn't immediately move away. For a few seconds, we just looked at each other, his head still on my shoulder, our faces closer than they'd ever been. I could count his eyelashes, could see the flecks of gold in his hazel eyes, could feel his breath against my collar. Something shifted in his expression, something I couldn't read. His gaze dropped to my mouth for just a fraction of a second, so brief I might have imagined it. Then he sat up, running a hand through his hair. "I should get to bed. Long day tomorrow." "Yeah, good night, Jake." "Night, Ryan." I sat on that couch for another hour after he'd gone to his room, heart racing, replaying that moment over and over. Had I imagined it? The look, the hesitation, the way the air between us had felt charged with something unspoken. Probably. I was just seeing what I wanted to see. Senior year be our final year. I'd almost convinced myself I had things under control. Almost we'd settled into a comfortable pattern again after the weirdness of the previous year. Jake threw himself into his thesis project, and I was drowning in job applications and senior capstone work. We still had our routines: coffee in the morning, dinner most nights, lazy Sundays watching whatever was on TV, but there were moments, small things that kept me from completely moving on. The way Jake always sought me out in a crowded room, his eyes finding mine like a compass pointing north. The way he'd absently touch my back when passing behind me in the kitchen. The way he remembered everything I told him, even stupid little details I'd forgotten myself. "You mentioned months ago you wanted to read this," he'd say, handing me a book. Or, "I picked up those weird Swedish cookies you liked from that shop downtown." Friends did thoughtful things for each other. I knew that. But sometimes, late at night, when my defenses were down, I'd let myself wonder if maybe, possibly, there was something more in the way Jake treated me. Then I'd remember Morgan and the girls he'd dated before her, and I'd shut that door firmly in my mind. Everything changed the weekend of Jake's thesis presentation. He'd been working on his architectural design for Munza community center concept that incorporated sustainable materials and adaptable spaces. It was brilliant, ambitious, and so quintessentially Jake that I felt proud just watching him work on it. The night before his presentation, he was a nervous wreck. "It's not ready," he kept saying. Pacing our living room at 11 p.m. The scale model needs adjustments, and I think my intro is too long. And what if the professors ask about the structural integrity of the South Wing because I'm still not sure about Jake? I caught his arm as he passed, stopping him mid-pace. Breathe. It's incredible. You're incredible. You're going to walk in there tomorrow and blow them away. He looked at me, really looked at me, and some of the panic faded from his eyes. You really think so? I know so. I've watched you pour everything into this. Your professors are going to see that. He took a shaky breath, then pulled me into a hug. Not unusual for us, but this one was tighter, longer, more desperate. His face pressed into my shoulder, and I could feel the tension in his body slowly unwinding. Thank you, he murmured against my shirt. For always believing in me? Always, I said, and meant it with every fiber of my being. When he pulled back, his hands lingered on my shoulders, and we were standing so close, I could see the nervous flutter of his pulse in his throat. His eyes searched my face like he was looking for something, and my heart was thundering so loud I was sure he could hear it. He stopped, whatever he'd been about to say, dying on his lips. What? He shook his head, stepping back. Nothing. I should try to get some sleep. Big day tomorrow, yeah? You'll do great. He did. His presentation was flawless, passionate, and exactly the kind of thing that made me fall for him in the first place. Watching him up there, confident and articulate, explaining his vision with such clarity and enthusiasm, I felt my chest swell with something that was part pride, part awe, and entirely love. Afterward, a group of us went out to celebrate. Jake's architecture, friends, some of my CS classmates, all crammed into a local bar that didn't check IDs too carefully. Jake was riding high on success and relief, laughing louder than usual, accepting congratulations and buying rounds for everyone. At some point in the evening, he threw his arm around my shoulders, pulling me close. Couldn't have done it without this guy, he announced to the table, slightly drunk. My best friend, my person. Seriously, Ryan's the best thing that ever happened to me. Everyone laughed and raised their glasses, and I tried to smile through the ache in my chest. Best friend, my person. So close to what I wanted to hear, but not quite there. Later, much later, when we stumbled back to our apartment, both buzzed and happy. Jake leaned heavily against me as I fumbled with the keys. Ryan, he said, voice soft and slurred. Yeah, I need to tell you something. My heart stopped. What? He was quiet for so long I thought he'd fallen asleep standing up. Then, never mind. Tomorrow, I'll tell you tomorrow. But tomorrow came, and he didn't mention it. I didn't push. I told myself it was just drunk rambling, nothing important. I was wrong. The photograph I should probably explain about the photograph he'd been holding that Saturday morning when I walked in on him. It was from a hiking trip we'd taken the previous summer. Just the two of us, deep into the mountains for a weekend. We'd been trying to reach this waterfall Jake had read about, getting completely lost in the process and ending up somewhere entirely different. At one point, we'd stopped to rest on this outcropping of rocks with a view of the valley below. Jake had pulled out his phone to take pictures, and he'd said something ridiculous. I couldn't even remember what that made me laugh. Really laugh, the kind that makes your sides hurt. He'd snapped the photo right then, catching me mid-laugh, sunlight in my hair, genuine joy on my face. Perfect, he'd said, showing it to me. That's getting printed. I'd rolled my eyes. But secretly, I'd loved how I looked in that photo. Unguarded, happy, free. Jake had gotten it printed and framed it, keeping it on his dresser in his bedroom. My favorite picture, he'd said when I noticed it. Reminds me of perfect days. And now, I knew he'd been holding it in the bathroom, looking at it with an expression that haunted me. An expression that spoke of longing and want and something I didn't dare name. After the bathroom incident, things got weird. Not immediately. That first day, we both pretended it hadn't happened. Jake stayed in his room most of the day, and I buried myself in a coding project. We moved around each other like ghosts, careful not to collide. Not to acknowledge the elephant now living in our apartment, but by Sunday evening, the tension was unbearable. I was making dinner, just pasta. Nothing fancy when Jake finally emerged from his room. He stood in the kitchen doorway, hands shoved in his pockets, looking uncertain in a way I'd never seen him. "Ryan, we should talk." My hand stilled on the pot. "Okay. About yesterday morning. About what you saw." "You don't have to explain anything," I said quickly. "It's your business." I should have knocked. It's not that simple. I forced myself to look at him. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept. Dark circles under his eyes, and his hair uncombed. Vulnerable. Almost fragile. "Then what is it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He took a breath, seeming to gather courage. "That photograph. Ryan, I look at it a lot. Too much, probably. And I know how that must have looked to you. Standing there half naked, holding a picture of you like some creep. But You're not a creep," I interrupted. "Jake, whatever's going on, you're not that. Then what am I?" The question came out raw, almost desperate. "Because I don't understand what's happening to me. We're best friends. We've been best friends for years. But lately, I can't stop thinking about you. Not in the way I should. Not in the way friends think about each other." The wooden spoon slipped from my fingers, clattering into the sink. I stared at him, unable to process what I was hearing. "What?" Jake ran both hands through his hair, a nervous gesture I knew well. "God, I'm making a mess of this. Look, I've been trying to figure this out for months. More than a year, maybe. Why I couldn't make it work with Morgan? Why I keep comparing every person I meet to you. Why I feel like I can't breathe when you're not around. Jake, I'm not done." He took a step closer and I could see his hands were shaking. "That night we broke up. Morgan asked me if I was in love with someone else. And I told her no, because I didn't understand it yet. But she saw it before I did. She knew." "Knew what?" My voice was barely a whisper. "That I'm in love with you. Ryan, I'm in love with my best friend, and I don't know when it happened or how. But it's been eating me alive because I thought—" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I thought you were straight. I thought I was straight. But then I realized I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you." The world tilted sideways. This couldn't be real. This was every daydream I'd ever had and convinced myself was impossible. "Say something," Jake pleaded. "Please, even if it's just to tell me to move out, that I've ruined everything. I need to know." I couldn't speak. My throat had closed up, emotions too big and too complicated crashing over me like waves. So instead, I closed the distance between us in 3 steps and kissed him. Jake froze for maybe half a second, surprised, and then he was kissing me back with an intensity that stole my breath. His hands came up to cup my face, tilting my head to deepen the kiss, and I grabbed fistfuls of his shirt to keep myself steady because my knees had gone weak. It was everything. Years of wanting, of longing, of shoving feelings down and pretending they didn't exist, all pouring out in that kiss. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jake pressed his forehead to mine. "I'm going to need you to use words at some point," he said, voice shaky but touched with laughter. "I love you," I said, the words falling out in a rush. "I've been in love with you for years, Jake. Years. I thought I was going insane. I thought I was alone in this. You're not alone?" "God, Ryan, you've never been alone in this." He kissed me again, softer this time, reverent. I've been such an idiot. All that time wasted because I couldn't figure out what I was feeling. We both were idiots. A matched set. We stood there in our tiny kitchen, holding each other. And I felt something in my chest finally settle. Like a puzzle piece clicking into place. Like coming home after a long journey. "The pasta is burning." Jake murmured against my lips. "Don't care. The smoke alarm is going to go off. Still don't care." But eventually we had to break apart. Laughing as we dealt with the ruined dinner and opened windows to air out the apartment. We ordered pizza instead, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was hiding part of myself. Didn't feel like I was carefully monitoring every word and gesture. We sat on our terrible couch, pizza boxes on the coffee table, Jake's arm around my shoulders in a way that meant something different now. "So what happens now?" I asked. Jake was quiet for a moment, thinking, "I guess we figure it out together." "That's what we've always done, right?" Figure things out together. I like that plan, Ryan. He turned to look at me, serious now. I know this is new and probably scary and definitely complicated, but I want you to know I'm all in. This isn't some experiment or phase for me. You're it. You've been it for longer than I realized. My throat tightened with emotion. You're it for me too. Always have been. He kissed me then, soft and sweet, and I thought about how I'd spent years convinced this moment would never come. Convinced Jake would never look at me the way I looked at him. Convinced I'd have to carry this secret love around forever, slowly learning to live with the ache of it. But I'd been wrong. So wonderfully, impossibly wrong. The following weeks, falling in love with Jake had happened slowly, over years. Learning how to be in love with Jake openly happened all at once. We were tentative at first, both of us navigating new territory. Our friendship had been built on years of history, and we were terrified of somehow breaking what we had. But slowly, carefully, we found our rhythm. Movie nights became movie nights where we could curl up together without second-guessing. Casual touches that once had to mean nothing could now mean everything. I could reach for his hand while walking down the street. He could kiss me goodbye before leaving for class. All the things I'd watched other couples do and ached for, now we could do too. But it wasn't perfect. Nothing ever is. I need to tell you something, I said one evening, about 2 weeks after we'd gotten together. We were lying on Jake's bed, the bigger of our two, just talking in the dark. What's wrong? I'm scared, I admitted. Not of you or us, but of losing this. We were best friends before anything else, Jake. If we screw this up somehow, we won't. You can't know that. He rolled onto his side, propping himself up on one elbow to look down at me. You're right. I can't promise we won't hit rough patches or have fights or struggle sometimes. But Ryan, we've been choosing each other for 5 years. This just makes it official. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just weren't paying attention. He was smiling, but his eyes were serious. We're going to be okay. Better than okay? I wanted to believe him. I did believe him, mostly. But the fear lingered. A small voice in the back of my mind whispering warnings. That fear proved prophetic, though not in the way I expected. The problem wasn't us. It was everyone else. We'd been careful at first about who we told, wanting to keep this precious new thing protected while we figured it out, but word got out eventually. The way it always does in the interconnected web of college social circles. Most people were supportive. Surprised, but supportive. Some of our mutual friends admitted they'd seen it coming, which was equal parts validating and embarrassing. But there were others who weren't as kind. Jake's architecture friend Marcus, someone he'd known since freshman year, made a comment at a party about how it was weird that we'd been living together all this time. The implication was clear and ugly. Some people from my CS program suddenly got awkward around me, like my sexuality was contagious. And Jake's parents, when he told them over spring break, went silent on the phone in a way that spoke volumes. They need time, Jake said after that call, but I could see how much their reaction had hurt him. They'll come around. And if they don't, then they don't, said it firmly, but I saw the pain in his eyes. You're not negotiable, Ryan. Not for anyone. I loved him for that. God, I loved him for choosing me even when it was hard. But I also saw what it cost him, and I hated that our relationship had to come with that price. The fight, we had our first real fight 2 months in. It started with something stupid. Jake had stayed late at a group study session with some classmates, including a girl named Tessa who'd made it pretty clear she was interested in him. He'd mentioned it casually, not seeing the issue, but I'd let jealousy and insecurity get the better of me. You could have texted, I said, when he got home at midnight. I did text, around 8. Once. 4 hours ago. Jake frowned, setting his bag down. Are we really doing this? You know where I was? Yeah. With Tessa, who's been flirting with you all semester? So, Ryan, come on. You know I'm not interested in her. Does she know that? I was being unfair, and I knew it, but I couldn't seem to stop. Because from where I'm standing, you haven't exactly made it clear. Shouldn't have to. You're my boyfriend. That should be clear enough. Except we don't exactly advertise it, do we? How many people in your architecture program even know about us? That hit a nerve. Jake's jaw tightened. That's not fair. You know, my parents are still processing this. I'm trying to handle this in a way that doesn't blow up my entire family. So I'm your dirty little secret. It's not what I said. Don't put words in my mouth. We stared at each other, both angry now, both hurt. This was new territory for us. We'd bickered before, sure, but never like this. Never with real stakes. I'm going to bed, Jake said finally, voice tight. We can talk about this when you're being rational. Screw you. Real mature, Ryan. He went to his room, closing the door firmly. Not quite a slam, but close. I stood in our living room, adrenaline pumping. Angry and hurt and hating that we were fighting but not sure how to fix it. I slept terribly that night. Lying in my bed replaying the fight, wishing I'd handled it differently. Around 3 a.m., I heard Jake's door open. Footsteps in the hall. A pause outside my door. Then it opened, and Jake was silhouetted in the doorway. I can't sleep, he said quietly. Can I pulled back the covers in answer, and he crossed the room, climbing into bed with me. We lay there in the dark, not touching at first, the tension still thick between us. I'm sorry, I said finally. I was jealous and insecure and I took it out on you. I'm sorry too. You're right that I should be more open about us. I've been protecting my parents' feelings at the expense of yours, and that's not okay. Your relationship with your family is important. I don't want to be the reason you lose that. What? Jake turned toward me, and in the dim light from the window I could see his face. You won't be. And if they can't accept me, accept us, then that's their problem, not ours. I don't want you to have to choose.
I already did. I chose you. I choose you every day. He reached for my hand under the covers, threading our fingers together. I love you. That's not going away because my parents need time to adjust, or because some girl in my program doesn't get the hint. You're it for me, Ryan. That's not changing. The knot in my chest loosened. I love you too, even when you stay late studying and forget to text. I'll work on that. And I'll work on not being a jealous asshole. Deal. We fell asleep like that, hands clasped between us, and when I woke up in the morning Jake was curled around me, his face pressed into my shoulder, peaceful in sleep. I lay there for a long time, just holding him, thinking about how we'd weathered our first real fight and come out stronger for it. Maybe we were going to be okay after all. Graduation. Spring semester flew by in a blur of finals, job interviews, and the strange bittersweetness of endings. Jake had accepted a position at an architecture firm in Seattle. I'd landed a software engineering job at a tech company in the same city. We'd both gone into those interviews hopping, and when we both got offers in the same place, it felt like fate. Seattle, Jake said, grinning as we celebrated with cheap champagne in our apartment. We're really doing this. New city, new jobs, new apartment. Together. Together, I confirmed, and the word tasted like a promise. Graduation day was chaos, robes and photos and family and endless ceremonies. Jake's parents came, still somewhat stiff around me but making an effort, which was something. My parents were there too, enthusiastically embracing Jake as part of the family in a way that made his eyes go suspiciously shiny. After the ceremony, we all went to dinner together, both families mingling somewhat awkwardly but trying. Jake's mom asked me about my new job. My dad talked to Jake about his architecture plans. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Later, after everyone had left, Jake and I walked around campus one last time, past the library where we'd pulled all-nighters, the dining hall where we'd met for breakfast 1,000 times, the quad where we'd spent lazy afternoons between classes. Feels weird, Jake said, hands in his pockets. Ending. It's not ending, just changing. Deep thoughts from Ryan Chen. Shut up. He laughed, then stopped walking, turning to face me. We were standing near the fountain in the center of campus, water splashing behind him, late evening light turning everything golden. Thank you, he said. For what? For being patient with me, for waiting while I figured myself out, for giving me a chance even after I was an oblivious idiot for years. Jake, you don't have to thank me for that. Yeah, I do, he stepped closer, taking my hands. I wasted so much time being scared of what I felt. If you'd given up on me on us, I wouldn't have blamed you. But you didn't. You stayed. You've always stayed. My throat felt tight. Where else would I go? You're my home, Jake. You're mine too. He kissed me there in the middle of campus, in front of anyone who might be watching, and I didn't care. Let them see. Let the whole world know that Jake Morneau loved me, and I loved him right back. When we pulled apart, both smiling, Jake reached into his pocket. Have something for you. It's not a ring, is it? Because we just graduated and that seems fast. It's not a ring, you idiot. But he was laughing as he pulled out a small box. Inside was a simple leather bracelet, custom made with our initials stamped inside. Jake, I know it's cheesy, but I wanted you to have something, a reminder that this is real, we're real. I let him fasten it around my wrist, the leather warm against my skin. I love it, I love you. Love you too. We walked back to our apartment, hands linked, talking about Seattle and the future and all the possibilities ahead of us. That night, we packed boxes and made plans and fell asleep tangled together on our terrible couch one last time. And I thought about how far we'd come. From that first day freshman year when Jake helped me carry a mini fridge up 3 flights of stairs, to now, planning a life together. From best friends to something deeper, more complicated, more beautiful than I'd ever imagined possible. Seattle. Our new apartment in Seattle was bigger than the old one, with windows that overlooked the city and a kitchen where 2 people could actually move around comfortably. We spent our first week exploring the neighborhood, finding coffee shops and grocery stores, and all the little places that would become part of our new routine. Jake's job was demanding but exciting. He'd come home full of stories about projects and clients, his passion infectious. My work was challenging in the best way, pushing me to grow and learn. We'd meet for lunch sometimes, stealing an hour in the middle of the day just to see each other. Life fell into a rhythm, weekend hikes in the mountains, lazy Sunday mornings in bed, game nights with new friends from work. We had fights sometimes because that's what couples did, but we'd learned how to work through them, how to talk instead of shutting down, how to choose each other even when it was hard. On our 1-year anniversary of being together, Jake made dinner actually cooked, which was still a novelty, and presented me with a framed photograph. It was from that beach trip years ago, the one where he'd taken my picture, but this was a different shot. This one showed both of us, his phone on a timer, sitting on those rocks overlooking the valley. Our shoulders were pressed together, both of us smiling at the camera, and if you looked close enough you could see the way we were looking at each other. Like we already knew, even then, that this was something special. I found it on my phone the other day, Jake said. Thought you might want it. I stared at the photo, at 2 younger versions of us who didn't quite understand what they had yet. It's perfect. You're perfect. That's the cheesiest thing you've ever said. I contain multitudes. He pulled me close, kissing my temple. Happy anniversary, Ryan. Happy anniversary. 2 years later. Jake's parents came to visit our Seattle apartment, their first time seeing where we lived. I was nervous for weeks leading up to it, obsessively cleaning and planning meals, and trying to make sure everything was perfect. They're going to love it, Jake assured me, and they already love you, stop stressing. Your mom was weird on the phone last time. She's always weird on the phone, that's just how she is. But when they arrived, something was different. Jake's mom, Maria, hugged me properly for the first time, not the stiff half embrace she'd given me at graduation. His dad, Robert, shook my hand and asked about my work with genuine interest. Over dinner that night, Maria looked at both of us, sitting close on our couch. Jake's hand resting on my knee in that unconscious way he had, and she smiled. I owe you an apology, she said. Both of you, but especially you, Ryan. I tensed. Mrs. Morneau, you don't. I do. When Jake first told us about your relationship, I didn't handle it well. I was surprised and confused, and I let my own issues get in the way of being supportive. That was wrong. Jake's hand tightened on my knee. Mom. Let me finish, Mijo. She turned to me. Ryan, you've been part of Jake's life for so long now, and watching the 2 of you together, seeing how happy you make each other, how you've built this life. I was foolish to ever think this was something to worry about. You're good for him, you're good for each other. I felt tears prick my eyes. Thank you, that means a lot. Robert cleared his throat. What Maria's trying to say is we are proud of you both, and we're sorry it took us so long to get here. Jake was definitely crying now, trying to hide it by looking down, but his shoulders were shaking. I put my arm around him, pulling him close, and his parents smiled at us with genuine warmth. That night, after they'd gone to their hotel, Jake and I lay in bed in the dark. Thank you for being patient with them, he whispered. They're your parents, they're worth being patient for. I'm lucky to have you. We're lucky to have each other. 5 years after that first kiss. Proposal wasn't something we'd seriously discussed. We were happy, comfortable, building a life together day by day. Marriage felt like something far in the future, something we'd get to eventually. But then Jake's friend from architecture school got married, and we went to the wedding together. Watched two people promise forever to each other, danced together at the reception while someone's aunt gave us approving nods. On the drive home, Jake was quiet. "What are you thinking about?" I asked. "Forever," he said. "How it sounds less scary than it used to." Yeah, he glanced at me, then back at the road. "Ryan, would you? I mean, someday would you want to? Are you asking me if I'd marry you?" "Maybe, theoretically." I laughed, reaching over to take his hand. "Theoretically, yes, I'd marry you in a heartbeat." Good to know. I thought that was the end of it, just a casual conversation. But 2 months later, Jake took me back to that beach house on the coast, the one where we'd spent spring break all those years ago. "Why here?" I asked as we walked down to the beach at sunset. "This is where I first realized," Jake said. "That night on the deck, holding your hand, I knew something had shifted. I just didn't have the words for it yet." "Jake." "Ryan Chen." He turned to face me, the ocean behind him, sunset painting everything in shades of orange and gold. And then he was dropping to one knee in the sand, pulling out a small box. "I've loved you for so long now that I can't remember what it feels like not to love you. You're my best friend, my partner, my home. You're the person I want to come home to every day and wake up next to every morning. So what do you say? Would you marry me?" I was crying before he finished, dropping to my knees in front of him. Yes, God, yes, of course, yes. The ring was perfect, simple, elegant, exactly my style. He slipped it onto my finger with shaking hands, and then we were kissing, laughing, crying, both kneeling in the sand as waves crashed nearby and the sun set on the horizon. "I love you," I said against his lips. "I love you too, so much." We stayed on that beach until the stars came out, wrapped in each other, talking about wedding plans and the future and everything we wanted to build together. And I thought about that scared college kid who'd been so convinced his feelings for his best friend would destroy everything. If I could go back and tell him what was waiting for him, I would. I'd tell him to be brave, to hold on, that the best things in life are worth fighting for, worth being terrified for, worth risking everything for. I'd tell him that sometimes, your best friend and the love of your life are the same person. And I'd tell him that happy endings are real, even when you think you don't deserve one. Wedding day. We got married a year later, on another beach, this one in California where both our families could easily attend. It was small, just close friends and family, exactly how we wanted it. I stood at the makeshift altar waiting, and when Jake appeared at the end of the aisle, my breath caught. He was beautiful in his suit, hair carefully styled, smiling at me like I was the only person in the world. We'd written our own vows. Mine went like this. "Jake, you've been my best friend, my roommate, my partner, and now you're about to become my husband. You saw me when I thought I was invisible. You loved me when I didn't think I was worthy of love. You taught me that the best kind of love isn't the kind that happens in a lightning strike moment, but the kind that grows slowly, built on friendship and trust and choosing each other every single day. I promise to keep choosing you, every day for the rest of our lives. I love you." Jake's vows made me cry. "Ryan, the day I met you carrying that ridiculous mini fridge, I had no idea you were going to change my life. But you did. You made me laugh when I was stressed. You believed in me when I doubted myself. You waited patiently while I figured out who I was and what I wanted. And then you loved me anyway, despite all my flaws and fears and the time I wasted being scared. You're my home. You're my always. And I promise to spend the rest of my life proving that you made the right choice in saying yes to this disaster of a human being. I love you more than words can say." When the officiant pronounced us married, when we kissed as husbands for the first time, the small crowd erupted in cheers. But I barely heard them. All I could focus on was Jake, his hands cupping my face, his smile brilliant and full of joy. We danced together as the sun set, surrounded by everyone we loved, and it felt like the ending of one story and the beginning of another, even better one. Epilogue 10 years later. Our apartment got upgraded to a house eventually, with an actual yard and enough space for Jake's drafting table and my home office. We adopted a dog, a rescue mutt named Gatsby who had terrible manners and the biggest heart. Jake's career took off. He made partner at his firm, started winning awards for his sustainable design work. I switched companies after a few years, ending up doing exactly the kind of work I'd dreamed about in college. We traveled when we could, back to that beach house every anniversary, to new cities when Jake had conferences, taking long weekends to explore the mountains near Seattle. We had more fights over the years. About money, about whose turn it was to claim, about whether we should move to a neighborhood with better schools before we even had kids. But we worked through each one, learning and growing together. My parents adored Jake, officially adopted him as their third son. His parents came to visit regularly, and his mom taught me how to make Jake's favorite childhood meals, sharing family recipes and stories. Some days were hard, work stress, family issues, the general chaos of adult life. But at the end of every day, I got to come home to Jake, to the person who knew me better than anyone, who'd seen me at my worst and my best, and loved me through all of it. On our 10-year wedding anniversary, we went back to Pacific Ridge University for a campus reunion event. Walking around the campus, so much had changed, but so much was still the same. "Remember that first day?" Jake asked, standing in front of our old dorm building, "when you were struggling with that mini fridge?" How could I forget? Best decision I ever made, accepting help from a cocky architecture student. Cocky, he pretended to be offended. I was charming. You were cocky, also charming, also the best thing that ever happened to me. Jake pulled me close, kissing me right there in the middle of campus where we'd shared our first real kiss all those years ago. We were older now, both in our 30s, with laugh lines and the comfortable ease of people who'd been together long enough to finish each other's sentences. Ryan, yeah, if you could go back and tell your college self anything, what would you say? I thought about it, looking at the campus where it had all started. I'd tell him to trust the process, that everything he's scared of, everything he thinks will go wrong, will actually turn out better than he ever imagined, that the boy he's falling in love with is falling right back, even if it takes him a while to figure it out. Good answer. What about you? Jake smiled, that same smile that had made me fall for him in the first place. I'd tell my college self to wake up sooner, that his best friend is also the love of his life, and he's wasting time being scared, that everything he wants is right there in front of him, if he's brave enough to reach for it. We got there eventually. We did, and it was worth the wait. We walked back to our car, hands linked, talking about the dinner reservation we had that night and the trip we were planning for next month. Normal things, everyday things, the beautiful mundane reality of a life built together. And I thought about that bathroom door that I hadn't knocked on all those years ago, about walking in and finding Jake holding my photograph with an expression that changed everything, about how one moment, one unexpected revelation, can alter the entire course of your life. Sometimes the best love stories aren't about love at first sight. They're about friendship that deepens into something more, about two people slowly realizing that what they're looking for has been right beside them all along, about choosing each other, over and over again, through every challenge and triumph. Jake caught me staring at him as we drove, and raised an eyebrow. What? Nothing, just thinking about how lucky I am. Sap. You love it. I really do. He reached over, taking my hand. I really, really do. 10 years after walking in on Jake holding my photograph, I can honestly say I wouldn't change a single moment of our story. Not the years of longing, not the fear, not even the pain of thinking my feelings would never be returned, because all of it led us here, to this life we've built together, to a love that started as friendship and grew into something neither of us could have imagined. If you're reading this and you're scared to tell someone how you feel, scared to risk a friendship for the chance at something more, I want you to know something: the risk is worth it. Not because everything will work out perfectly, life doesn't offer those guarantees, but because living with the what if is so much harder than living with the truth. Jake and I almost missed our chance because we were both too scared to be honest, but in the end, love found a way, and I believe it can for you too. Thank you for reading our story, for watching us grow from uncertain college kids to the men we are today, for believing in second chances and slow burn romance and the idea that sometimes your person has been there all along. Hey friends, if this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more emotional LGBTQ+ love stories that celebrate real connection and authentic romance. Speech Balloon, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever been in love with your best friend? How did your story unfold? And more importantly, should I share what happened during our honeymoon in part 2? Because trust me, there are more stories to tell about our journey together. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one. White Train Bared.